Okay, in this video we're going to take a look at a ZModeler brush as well as uh, a little bit of how polygroups work in the program. So first of all, we start by initializing a polymesh 3D cube. So we go here into this initialize tab, and as you know, both the primitives and the polymesh 3D meshes have this initialize tab. And what we can do with this, I'll show you just. So I'm gonna take this X, Y, and Z resolution to 1, and I'm gonna click this Q cube. And what we now have is this perfectly ordinary cube. Okay, next I'm gonna grab the ZModeler brush, so I tapped the Z key and picked the ZModeler there, and the ZModeler is like a small polygon modeling package I'm gonna close this one, inside of ZBrush. So polygon modeling is possible inside ZBrush to a certain extent at least. So when we hover over any of these mesh elements, like a point for example, and then press down the spacebar, we get point action, a list of point actions, and a list of targets. When we hover over an edge, we get edge actions and targets for that, and when we hover over a poly, we get a list of polygon actions and targets for those, and some modifiers as well. So just press down the spacebar, and all of these functions are available to you by just clicking on the different options available. So first, let's check what this Q mesh means. So polygon action is Q mesh, target is a single poly, as opposed to, for example, like a polygroup island or something. So let's just see what that does. Okay, so it's extruding apparently. Then when we tap on this again, we just tap it. So tapping will repeat whatever we did. Okay, so what's the difference between extruding? Well, Q meshing is essentially, you can just sort of merge back those vertices that you have pulled. But not only that, but you can also just push them away, like so. Okay, let's make a test. So let's take this insert a single poly. Okay, and then let's take the Q mesh. Yes, except that now we lost the back face, so we should also do the inset on the other side. So let's tap on that, and let's tap on that, sorry, and then let's take the Q mesh and push that. So there, that's nice. So as opposed to extruding, which is a feature that is familiar to you from like Maya or other 3D applications, Blender, etc. Extruding is just, or intruding, it's just this. It's creating new geometry. It's not welding anything. You cannot do this. So Q meshing is very very interesting feature. Okay, let's go back a bit. Not that much. Then I'm gonna scale that. Let's still scale it a bit. And now I'm gonna let's insert again. And I'm going to QMesh again. Then I'm going to mask this portion, invert the mask, and take this up slightly. And then, if we would want to QMesh these borders, this polyloop around this frame, we would have to have a polygroup for it. So, or we can also use this poly loop, but I want to show you how to create temporary polygroup. So we just press down the Alt key and we tap on a polygon, tap on another one, and there and there. So now we have a temporary polygroup, and let's QMesh a polygroup island. Okay, so that's very handy in certain cases. So Alt key down and you can create a temporary polygroup. Then let's pull those out a bit as well, and I'm gonna create these temporary polygroups for these as well, and then I'm going to QMesh them, and then let's check out the beveling feature. So hover over an edge and let's take bevel, and yeah, okay, that's fine. So we beveled an edge in there, and then let's bevel, for example, this one. Okay, that's nice. So just a quick look at some of the features that are available to you. Of course, there are also, like, for example, you can, for example, when it comes to point actions, you can, for example, stitch points together, you can bridge points. Let's take a look at that, for example. So let's bridge 2 points. So let's pick this one and this one. Yeah, so it's creating an edge there. Edge. And then let's quickly make a Polymesh 3D, append it here, append, and we're gonna scale it. Let's do a quick painting. Geometry, divide, then standard brush, yeah, let's make some trees there. Yeah, nice, beautiful, sun is shining, nice. And then color, fill object, and color, fill object, nice. Okay, well, maybe not the optimal colors for that, but hey, it's modern art or something. And then let's add that into this scene here. Scale it up a bit. Oops. And there we have it. Nice. So let's go here. So next I'm going to go through how this chair was made. It was made with the ZModeler. So I quite simply started again out of a cube. I flattened the cube and then I started making some extrusions. So let's pick the ZModeler again. Actually, the draw size is irrelevant to this, but whatever. And I'm putting on the X symmetry. And oh yeah, let's create a polygroup, temporary polygroup by tapping the Alt. So then let's insert some edge loops. So insert edge loop. Let's insert multiple edge loops. So that's a nice feature. It's placing the edge loops evenly and symmetrically. And it works so even if we didn't have the symmetry on. So I'm tapping the X key and then drawing these edge loops there, and you can see that they are in the symmetrical. They're symmetrically and evenly spaced there. Okay, then let's take the insert edge loop action again. This time a single edge loop, and I'll add it there, and then press the Alt key down to have temporary. Temporary polygroup again, and then I'm gonna Q-mesh that. And perspective mode off, and I'm gonna take the transpose line. So when you turn off the Gizmo 3D, you get the transpose line, which you can place anywhere and it's going to stick adjacent to the mesh. So I'm gonna move this, slide this like this a bit, and then I want it to be like this. So how do I even those out? So I'm gonna mask this portion here, I'm gonna invert the mask, and then I'm gonna take the Gizmo 3D again, go to unmasked center, and then just pull those adjacent to the orientation of the Gizmo 3D. And then I'm going to unmask, so control down and drag out of the object, then go to unmasked center again, and then again I'm going to even those out by pulling from this rectangle. Okay, and then unmask again, and then mask those, and then I'm going to go again into that unmasked center and oops, even those out. Okay, so now we are on here on this step, and I'm gonna hop over some of these steps, but I'm just gonna show you some good features or tricks. So next up I have raised these armrests from here. So let's create a temporary polygroup again, and QMesh polygroup island. Okay, but now as you see, it's snapping here because we're using QMesh and not extrude. But I don't want to use extrude because then we would get geometry that is that would be well, I'll show you. Let's take the extrude and polygroup island. So now, as you can see, there are faces facing each other in there. Oops, and that's not what I want. So to fix this, let's just insert a poly loop, edge loop there, and then sorry, we have to change it into QMesh, and now it's snapping there. Okay, so that's one way to go about it. And let's also, I have lowered this seed section here, so let's insert an edge loop into the place where we want to QMesh the seed, and then just QMesh it there. Okay, nice. And so then I have of course also inserted some edge loops there and so on, tweaked it a bit, but I'm not going to show all that, I mean, because it's quite self-explanatory how to do that. So here's the progress. I have created some new polygroups and adjusted the shape a bit, and for example here we can see that I have pulled out a cushion for this chair here, so let's do that. So QMeshing is not working for this time, so we're going to use the extrude, so like that. And now it's of course this new extrusion is of the same size as this mesh from where it was extruded, and let's scale this polygroup island a bit, like so. Okay, and maybe well, okay, I think it's okay. Now I want to show next why I am doing these polygrouped regions. So let's divide this a bit. So without smoothing, I'm gonna just divide it a couple of times, and then I'm going to go here into deformation tab and polish by groups. And as you can see, that indeed polished the whole mesh based on groups. So all the borders of the groups are sharp, they're creased, and wherever there is a single group, it's smooth all around. So let's take a couple of steps back, and then I'm gonna choose this, and I'm going to polygroup this masked section, so group masked from polygroups tab, or there is also a hotkey for it. Control and W. So you don't necessarily have to go here and click on this group masked. The hotkey is Control and W. Then let's divide again a couple of times, and let's now see what happens to this newly grouped area. So okay, just as you guessed it, now it's smoothing it. Okay, so we are getting closer to the shape of the chair. So then I have raised some top rails there, and then I have taken them out. And yeah, so gradually we are getting to this. So indeed, with this kind of a mesh, of course, divide a couple of times and then polish by groups, and there we have it. It's already looking very much like a chair, right? So of course with a bit more subdivisions, and in this case I have lowered this part a bit, but anyway, then I have reshaped the chair a bit, because, well, I wasn't happy with this. It started to be a bit too long, and on the other hand I also wanted the back part to be slightly higher. So what we can do is we can just go back to the first subdivision level, and then let's put the polyframe on again, and we can just mask a portion, unmask, and then just squash that a bit. Okay. And then let's do the same to this portion. So let's just scale and squash that a bit. And then I had also risen this back part a bit, so let's do that as well. And as always, since we have these subdivisions on this mesh, we can just go back up and voila. So from this to this. Of course we can even, you know, use, for example, this move brush a bit to reshape the chair, but sometimes it's a bit risky, a little bit risky thing to do, or I mean, it might end up making you polish a lot of these shapes if you're reshaping them by hand. So that's one of the very good things about having subdivision levels, is that you can always go to the lowest subdivision level and like adjust them like that on that level. Okay, so it's fairly similar, and I'm not going to adjust it any further. It's good enough there. Serves as an example. And then we have this chair top rail here, which I had on in this face. So it was created by just quite simply. Let's take the ZModeler again, and QMesh won't. Oh, let's take out the subdivision levels. So QMesh obviously won't work because it's going to weld. So again we have to use the extrude. So let's extrude that out, and then I'm going to isolate those, and I'm going to delete the hidden. Then let's give this a new polygroup. So just polygroup a single poly. Okay. Then just move these a bit and divide a couple of times. And again we go here in the polish by groups, and now it's polished, and we can also divide it by with this smooth modifier on. And now we have this nice and clean chair rail that we can just embed into the back of the chair. There is now also another one visible there, but anyway, let's scale it a bit, like so. Okay. Anyway, then so once we have gotten to this pace, it's all about adding some details in there. So I'm gonna go to solo mode again so that you see it a bit better. So this is just the subdivided ZModeler and polygrouped mesh, and I have then just gone in and sculpted some detail in there and some more detail in there, after which I have added these buttons in there. So let's take a look at that. So here I'm gonna put solo mode on. So what this button is, it's just a sphere that I have flattened, and after that, after I have made this, I go here into the brush menu, brush palette, and there's this button called Create Insert Mesh. And when creating an insert mesh, you have to make sure that it is facing you with its front towards you. Okay, so that's important, so that it's not like vaguely like facing you or something like that, but it has to be snapped and facing, snapped to an angle and facing you, and then you click on this and create a new brush, new, and now we can go test this thing. So first of all, you cannot draw an insert mesh onto a mesh if it has multiple subdivision levels. So let's get rid of those. Del lower, and now, as you can see, we can draw onto the mesh, and the size of the button can be controlled or the mesh that you have made in the InsertMesh brush, it can be controlled by pressing down the control key. So, and what is contributing to the size of this mesh is this draw size. So let's take that to 62, for example, and when you press down the control key while dragging, that's the size 62 now. Let's take the size to 15, and now I'm gonna drag and press down the control key, and now I can draw these buttons that are the same size as these buttons. So that's how I have made these. So I just flattened a sphere, made it into an InsertMesh brush, and started dragging them on the surface of the mesh. But one thing that you have to know about the placement of these is that now they are sort of slightly hovering over the mesh. So if you want to embed them inside of the mesh, then you'll go here into the brush drop menu, and there is this depth in here, and we even have this visual presentation. So let's take it to 0. So depth in brush drop menu, and now as we draw, oh sorry, pressed the wrong button there. Now as we draw it on, it's being embedded or embedded in the mesh. Okay, so that's about that, and let's split. So what I did there was I just quite simply pressed Ctrl and Shift, clicked on one of them, and because they are a single polygroup, they are selected, and we can invert the selection by pressing down Ctrl and Shift and dragging outside, and then split hidden, sorry, and yeah. And we can also go here into polygroups and hit this auto groups to have them different polygroups, so that we can, with the Ctrl Shift key pressed down again, we can select them separately, and we can even go about sorry, the lock was open, go about moving them where we want, if we weren't happy with the placement. Okay, and then there are also these. So these were also made with this InsertMesh feature, together with a curve function, which can be, or curve feature, which can be found from here. So stroke and activate curve mode, and just draw on the mesh, and we're getting those. And we can drag this curve that we drew there, and we can modify it, and we can also continue drawing on it when we go near the end. So yeah, that's how these were made. And again, you can adjust the size of these buttons from there, like so. And then there is also this here. So how sorry, I'm gonna split those. So now there are a separate subtool here, this row of buttons. So let's activate the polyframe and deactivate the line fill, and now we can see all the polygroups more better. And let's go again here into the stroke drop menu and open this curve functions, and let's click frame mesh, and let's hit solo mode, and now you can see that the frame mesh button created these frames around these polygroups. And now when we click on one of those curves or frames, we got these rows of buttons on each of the edges of the polygroups. And then just tap on the mesh, and there we have it. Let's split unmasked, and let's Control Shift click on only this polygroup, and then click on frame mesh, then tap on the curve, and now we get a row of these buttons, a row of these meshes only on this area, only encircling this particular polygroup. Okay, then split unmasked points. So that's how those were created. And when it comes to these chair legs, well, I'm going to just quickly show how those were done. So essentially I just made a very low poly cube that I then started Q meshing and or extruding, I don't know, one or the other, and then polygrouped these certain portions. Then let's again go here and divide a couple of times and go to deformation and polish by groups, and there we've got it. Just resize it and place it. Then okay, that's about that project. So please do explore the ZModeler brush a bit. That's a very good brush, and also now you're also aware of how to use the polygroups for not only isolating certain parts, for which it is very handy, but also how to use this polish by groups feature. It takes a little bit of practice to get a hang of this, but you'll manage. And then lastly the InsertMesh feature. I just wanted to expose you to these features so that you know that there are these kinds of features. Okay, so thanks for watching the video, and hopefully you got some good ideas of how to utilize these features.